Since I was a child, my whole world was built on devotion. Before I could even read a full sentence, I was already sitting cross-legged beside my father, the air heavy with sandalwood and old chants that seemed to live in the walls. His voice was deep, steady, echoing off the floor and ceiling like a wave that never ended. I remember trying to match his rhythm, my small voice trembling to keep up. Those sounds became the music of my life. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, they weren't just stories or lessons to me. They were living, breathing things. Every verse felt alive, like it could feel my heartbeat. I didn't just read them, I let them move through me until I couldn't tell where I ended and the words began. Mornings started before dawn, when the sky was still painted in deep blue and silver. The air was cool, quiet, waiting. I'd step carefully so the floorboards wouldn't creak, light the small lamp on the altar, and watch the flame flicker awake. That light was my first companion each day. I'd start the mantras in a whisper, my voice almost lost in the stillness. Sometimes the flame danced with my breath as if it was listening. My hands moved on their own, guided by years of habit. The flowers, the rice, the water, all placed with care. Every movement had meaning. Every sound mattered. I truly believed that if I made one small mistake, the unseen world would know. My teachers were strict. Their eyes saw everything. The old gurus spoke with a kind of power that both scared and inspired me. Their voices carried truth like thunder, wrapped in silence. I spent years under them, memorizing, fasting, cleansing, meditating until my legs shook. I ate little, slept less. I gave up everything people said brought happiness, food that tasted good, laughter, touch, love. I thought I was trading small pleasures for something greater. I thought one day I'd find moksha, that perfect freedom where the soul no longer needs to return. I dreamed of that every single day. But time has its own way of breaking through. Somewhere inside all that chanting and stillness, something began to shift. It didn't happen all at once. It started as a faint feeling, like a thread pulled loose deep inside me. I ignored it, thought it was weakness, maybe fatigue, but it kept coming back. This quiet question I couldn't escape. It followed me through prayers, through silence, through the long hours when the only sound was my breath. It asked without words, "Is this really it?" One evening, everything felt different. The temple courtyard was empty after the last prayer. The sky burned with that soft orange glow that only comes when the sun is just about to disappear. The bells had gone silent. The incense smoke drifted slowly, curling in the still air. I sat on the cool stone floor, robe clinging to my skin, watching the last bit of light fade from the sky. For the first time in years, I didn't feel peace. I felt hollow. Not angry, not lost, just empty, like the inside of me had gone quiet in a new, unsettling way. Somewhere far off, a stray dog barked. The sound echoed through the temple walls. I looked down into the brass bowl of water I had used for the offerings. My reflection stared back, but it wasn't the same face I remembered. The boy who once believed every prayer was a doorway was gone. The man looking back seemed older, harder, like he'd spent his whole life searching and still hadn't found what he was looking for. My eyes looked tired, not from fasting, but from years of chasing something that no longer felt close. That night, I couldn't sleep. The chants I'd said since childhood moved through my head, but they didn't bring calm. They were just words now, beautiful sounds with no place to land. I stared at the ceiling and thought of all I had given up. The nights I'd gone hungry, the people I had left behind, the laughter I never allowed myself. And somewhere in that quiet, a single thought rose, clear and sharp. What if I had misunderstood everything? I wanted to silence it. I tried. I went back to my mantras, whispered them again and again, but the thought didn't leave. It stayed, waiting, patient, almost gentle. My heart started to beat faster, not from fear, but from something I couldn't name. My whole life was built on faith. Every breath, every rule, every ritual. But suddenly it all felt fragile, like thin paper in my hands. I had done everything right, I had given everything I had. Yet deep inside, something small and steady was waking up, and it wouldn't go back to sleep. It made no sense. The temple walls were still the same, the lamp still burned at dawn, the chants still filled the air. But inside me, something had changed. A restlessness had taken root, quiet but alive, as if my soul itself was shifting beneath the weight of years. It was the first time I realized that maybe devotion alone wasn't enough. Maybe something greater was waiting, something I had never dared to see before. The days that followed blurred together. I went through the same motions, but the feeling wouldn't fade. Every ritual, every breath carried a strange echo now. Even the silence between prayers felt louder, charged with something I couldn't explain. I'd sit in meditation trying to still my thoughts, but my heart beat with a rhythm that didn't belong to the old ways anymore. It was calling to something unseen, something that felt both near and impossibly far. At first, I told myself it was nothing. The body wearing thin. Too many nights without sleep, too many days pushing beyond what any body should take. I'd been through exhaustion before. This was just another wall to climb, another test of will. I told myself that if I could outlast it, the silence would return. But then the dreams began. They came softly, like whispers sneaking through cracks in the dark. At first, only flashes, bursts of light too bright to look at, a voice calling my name from a distance I couldn't measure. I would wake drenched in sweat, chest heaving, hands trembling, my throat dry as if I'd been shouting. I told myself the same lie every morning. It's nothing, just the mind clearing itself. But each night the dreams deepened. The voice drew closer. Soon the light began to hold shape. It wasn't just brightness. It had presence, like it was alive, aware. I couldn't see a face, but I could feel it seeing me. My name would echo through air that didn't move, each syllable vibrating in my bones. Sometimes it spoke in words that weren't of this world, soft, commanding, strange. The sound filled me with both fear and peace, two forces colliding inside me. It was like standing in both fire and water, burning yet calm, fierce yet kind. I fought it. Everything in my training told me to reject such things. It had to be Maya, the trick of the mind. Or worse, some corruption sent to test my purity. I told myself I would not be deceived. I would drive it out through discipline. But deep down, I knew something had changed. Something was waking that no amount of chanting could quiet. So I made a decision. I would fast again, deeper, harder, longer than ever before. If there was impurity within me, I would burn it out. No food, no water, no rest, no comfort, just devotion. This would be the shift, the moment the clouds would lift and truth would finally stand clear. The first days were familiar. Hunger gnawed, thirst burned, the body trembled. I'd felt all that before. But then the world began to sway. My vision shimmered at the edges, light and shadow twisting together. My voice cracked when I prayed. My hands shook even as I lifted them to the altar. Still, I didn't stop. The flesh is weak, I told myself. The spirit is stronger. Then the breaking came. I was kneeling before the altar, the air thick with incense smoke. The oil lamp flickered and shadows danced across the walls. My voice was barely a whisper when it happened. Pain, sudden, fierce, unstoppable, a burning that tore through my chest like lightning. My breath caught halfway. My arms failed me. The ground rushed up and I fell forward, my forehead striking the cold stone. Sound collapsed first, the chanting, the crackling flame like all fading to a dull ringing. Then came the heartbeat, uneven, stumbling, and then slowing. My vision blurred, colors folding into each other. Cold spread through me from the fingers up, slow and cruel. I tried to move. Nothing. Tried to speak. No sound. Just silence. The truth arrived without warning. I am dying. The words formed without fear, clear as glass. I had seen death before, held the hands of those who slipped away, but never imagined it like this. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't soft. It was raw, final, absolute. And then everything stopped. The world froze. The air turned weightless. My heart struck one last heavy beat, then fell quiet. But awareness didn't die. It kept going. In what felt like the next breath, I was no longer inside my body. I was above it, weightless, silent, awake. The temple stretched below me like a dream made solid. My own body lay still at the altar, arms open, palms up, as if surrendering to something unseen. My chest didn't rise. My lips, the same ones that had shaped a lifetime of prayer, were motionless. A surge of panic tore through me. I wanted to reach down to pull myself back inside, but there was nothing to touch. The connection was gone. I was still thinking, still seeing, still me. But the body below was an empty shell. In that moment, every true had built my life on cracked apart. The boundaries between matter and spirit, between life and death, weren't lines at all. They were smoke, and I had crossed through them without warning. Everything I thought I knew dissolved into silence, and what waited beyond it was nothing like I had been taught. I tried to move, to reach out, to grab hold of something real, But my hands, if I even still had them, slid through the air like smoke. There was no weight, no warmth, no ground. I turned toward the temple door, desperate to see the only world I'd ever known, the golden light, the flicker of the flame, the altar that had anchored my life, but it was already slipping away. The walls that once felt eternal began to dissolve, their stone melting like sand sinking into dark water. The air thickened. It pressed in close, heavy and cold, and yet somehow alive. I could feel something there with me, something unseen, vast, aware. And then it began to pull. It wasn't gentle. It was a force that gripped every part of me and dragged me forward. I fought it, clung to the fading light, tried to hold on to a prayer, a thought, anything. But it was useless. The harder I struggled, the stronger it grew. The temple vanished. The earth disappeared. I was being taken. Then silence. Floating in nothing. No sound, no light, no body. Just awareness hanging in a space that felt endless. I could still think. I could still feel. But I couldn't find myself. My body, my breath, my heartbeat, all gone. Around me stretched a vast darkness, not the kind that comes at night, but something thicker, older, alive in its own way. It felt as if the very air was watching me. At first, the silence was total. Then came the whispers. They arrived softly, like wind moving through faraway trees. But the longer I listened, the closer they came, rising and falling in waves, hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, circling around me. Some sounded like languages I almost knew. Others were warped, distorted, like they were being spoken from inside the shadows. I turned, if turning even meant anything there, trying to find where they were coming from, but they were everywhere. Shapes began to move in the dark, faint, shifting outlines, twisting in ways the eyes weren't made to see. They slid through the blackness, growing clearer, more real. Then I saw them, figures, tall, crooked, watching. Their forms shimmered and wavered, and where faces should have been, there were only hollows. Then their eyes appeared, cold, colorless, empty. They weren't just looking at me, they were looking through me. It was like every hidden thing I had ever buried, every doubt, every secret, was being pulled out and held up in front of them. I tried to move away, but there was nowhere to go. I opened my mouth to speak, to demand to know what was happening, but no sound came. My voice was gone. It was as if something had reached inside me and taken it. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Then I felt it. A presence. Enormous. Crushing. It was everywhere at once, pressing down without touch, filling every corner of the darkness. The air itself grew solid around me. The whispers rose to a roar, the figures shifted closer, and suddenly their voices became words. You will never be free. You failed in your path. Your karma was not enough. You do not belong to the light. Each phrase hit me like fire through my chest. I could feel the truth of their words, not because they were right, but because they saw the cracks I had tried so hard to hide. Every doubt, every moment of pride, every trace of envy or fear I had buried under years of devotion, it all burned before me. I was stripped bare, my life laid open like a book they were reading aloud. I wanted to fight back, to tell them they were wrong, that I had lived for devotion, that I had given everything, every breath, every thought to something pure. But deep inside, I knew what they saw. My faith had never been free of fear. My worship had been tied to hope and terror in equal measure. Fear of failing, fear of not being worthy, fear that even perfection would not be enough. And now that fear stood in front of me, no longer hidden. It had a voice. It had form. Desperate, I tried to pray. I reached for the mantras that had once risen from my lips without thought, but the words wouldn't come. My mind grasped for them and found only silence. The holy sounds that had always brought peace were gone, hollow echoes swallowed by the darkness. I tried again, forcing my thoughts to remember the rhythm, the tone, the power of those sacred syllables. But here they had no weight. My lips moved, but the space swallowed every sound. The mantras vanished like smoke in the wind. The verses that had once carried me through every trial now fell flat, meaningless. And in that suffocating stillness, I realized whatever ruled this darkness didn't fear my prayers. It didn't need to. Here, they held no power. The darkness pulsed again, closer now, breathing around me. The figures watched without moving, their eyes like open wounds. The whispers returned, sharper this time, crawling beneath my thoughts. And through them, through that endless roar, I felt something stirring, something vast, ancient, patient, waiting for me to understand what I had truly entered. Then the darkness moved. Not the way smoke drifts or clouds roll. It moved like something alive. It breathed. It pulsed, slow and steady, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Each pulse sent out a pull that reached for me, light at first, like a current brushing against my skin. But then it grew stronger, violent, relentless, dragging me downward into what felt like a bottomless sea. I could feel it in every part of me, an invisible weight pulling harder and harder until resistance itself felt useless. The air, or whatever this was, tightened around me, pressing in, and below me, the abyss opened wide like a mouth. That's when I saw them. Countless souls, falling, twisting, reaching in every direction, their faces frozen in pain and terror. Some wore robes like mine, holy men, monks, teachers. Others were just ordinary people, mothers, children, strangers. All of them caught in the same endless fall. Their cries rose like a storm, their voices cutting through the dark, begging for mercy that never came. Their despair hit me like a wave. I could feel it, hear it, taste it, the sound of regret so deep it felt alive. They were lost, trapped in their own chaos, reaching for something that wasn't there. I tried to fight. I tried to hold on to anything that still felt like me. I reached for prayer, for mantra, for the sacred words that had always been my refuge. But nothing worked. The pull only grew stronger. It was like being dragged into the center of my own fear. I felt the truth pressing down on me, heavy and final. I was going where they were going. And then, everything changed. A blaze tore through the darkness like fire ripping through night. It wasn't light in the way we know it. It was power. It burned but didn't destroy. It lived. It moved with purpose, unstoppable, alive with something holy. The darkness screamed, twisting, recoiling, tearing itself apart as if struck by lightning. The air itself shook. And then I heard it, my name. The sound didn't come from around me. It came through me. The voice was not pleading. It carried command, authority, a force that made everything else bow before it. With that single sound, the pull broke. The darkness shattered. The screams faded. I was surrounded by light, blinding, golden, endless. It wrapped around me, through me, inside me. Every inch of my being soaked in warmth and peace, so pure it felt alive. The suffocating weight vanished. The whispers of corruption, the fear, the pain, all gone. In their place was stillness that felt like breath for the very first time. This wasn't illusion. This wasn't vision. This was real. The light grew wider, deeper, stretching beyond what my mind could hold. It filled everything, and from its heart, a figure began to form. At first, I couldn't look. The brilliance was too much. But slowly, as my eyes adjusted, I saw him. He stood at the center of the light, still, unmoving, radiant beyond words. His form glowed, yet his face was clear. I had never seen him, never spoken his name in prayer, never called to him in all my years of chanting and devotion. And yet, the moment I saw him, I knew. My soul knew before my thoughts could catch up. Jesus. The name itself carried power. I didn't think it. It rose from somewhere inside me, from the very place that had been empty for so long. I had spent my life chasing truth through the Vedas, through endless mantras, through the silence of meditation and the ache of sacrifice. I had served gods whose faces I could never imagine, given all I had to rituals that promised freedom. But I had never searched for him. And yet, here he was. His presence was unlike anything I had ever felt. It wasn't the power of thunder or the authority of fire. It was deeper. It was strength that didn't need to prove itself, perfection without pride, holiness that didn't stay distant but came near. The gods I had worshipped were high, unreachable, hidden in symbols and chants. But he stood close enough that I could feel his heart. Then he looked at me. The moment our eyes met, everything that I was came undone. My entire life unfolded before him. Every thought, every act, every secret, every doubt. He saw it all in an instant. I couldn't hide anything. But there was no anger in his eyes, no condemnation. What I saw instead struck deeper than any punishment could. Sorrow. Not for himself, but for me. A grief so pure it cut through me like light through shadow. It was the pain of watching someone you love walk a long road in the wrong direction. In that gaze, I saw what my devotion had missed. Every offering, every ritual, every verse. It wasn't meaningless, but it was incomplete. I had chased truth my whole life, yet never touched the heart of it. I had known about God, but I had never known him. I wanted to speak, to say something, to explain. To tell him I had been sincere, that I had given everything I had. But no words came. Not because I couldn't speak, but because nothing I could say would matter. The truth was already there between us. I remembered the years of fasting until my body trembled, the days of silence, the smell of incense rising through the air, the chants that had filled the temple halls. I had believed that discipline would free me, that sacrifice would bring peace. But now, standing before Jesus, I understood how small my efforts were next to the love I was seeing. He didn't move closer, but somehow I felt him right in front of me. His light wrapped around everything, around me, around the darkness that once held me. I could feel the air hum with life. And when he finally spoke, the sound wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It simply was. "Your time is not yet over," he said, "but you must see the truth." The words entered me like fire and water together, burning and healing, cutting and restoring. They didn't just reach my ears, they filled every part of me. And as the echo of his voice faded into silence, the light around me began to shift. The light around Jesus began to draw back, folding into itself like a living veil of gold and white. Yet even as it receded, it was still everywhere, woven into the air, breathing through the silence, filling the space between every heartbeat. I couldn't move, not because I was held by force, but because I was completely bound to him. My will, my thoughts, even my soul carried within the current of his presence. There was no time there, no seconds passing. One instant I was inside that unending radiance, and the next, everything had changed. I stood in a vast expanse that had no beginning and no end, no horizon, no earth beneath my feet, no sky above. Yet it wasn't empty. It was alive, filled. A sea of souls stretched out beyond sight, millions, maybe more, glowing like faint embers of every shade. They shimmered softly, some bright as morning, others dim as fading stars. They stood in clusters, some hand in hand, others alone, quiet, searching. A few looked upward, faces full of hope. Others bowed their heads as if realizing something too great to bear. The very air, if it could be called air, was charged with emotion. Peace and awe flowed beside fear and confusion, all tangled together like soundless waves. Some faces glowed with a calm so deep it was almost painful to look at. They were radiant, sure, anchored in something I could not name. But others, oh, their eyes told another story. Shock, realization, the breaking of everything they thought they knew, the weight of truth pressing into their very being. I moved forward, though my body never seemed to take a step. It was as if I was carried. My gaze passed over countless souls, men, women, old, young, from every land and faith, Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, and many who had denied all belief in life. I could see traces of who they were: robes, turbans, crosses, malas, simple garments. Each still carried a mark of their journey, of what they had believed. The air hummed with low whispers, soft questions, weeping, words that faded before reaching sound. Some called out for understanding. Others simply stood in stunned silence, eyes wide, hearts open, waiting for an answer that did not come. Then my attention was drawn to a brilliant gate far in the distance. It stood immense, towering, made of light so living it pulsed. Beyond it, the radiance was not blinding, but alive, like breathing gold, full of presence. Near the gate stood a group of men, separated from the rest. When I saw them, my spirit stopped. I knew them. They were Hindu priests, teachers, gurus, men I had once bowed to, listened to, followed. Their robes still shimmered with symbols of holiness, their foreheads marked with sacred signs. I remembered sitting at their feet, repeating their words, trusting their every teaching. These were not false men. They were sincere, disciplined, wise. Yet their faces were filled with fear. They stood before the gate, and it did not open. One elder stepped forward, his white beard trembling, his voice cracking through the silence. "We followed the path," he cried. "We lived in discipline. We honored the gods. We gave our lives in devotion." His voice echoed through the expanse, but the sound vanished into stillness. The gate remained unmoved. Another lifted his arms toward the radiant light beyond. "We upheld Dharma," he shouted. "We fasted, we prayed, we purified ourselves. Why are we left outside?" His cry struck me like thunder. Every word held the desperation of a lifetime spent in faith, now unanswered. Still, nothing changed. The gate remained closed, shining with impossible peace. A young monk fell to his knees, clutching his chest. His whisper trembled. "This must be a test, an illusion. We followed truth. We lived righteously. Surely we are not rejected." But the silence that followed was heavier than any sound I had ever known. No voice answered. No door opened. I felt a deep chill move through me, not of cold, but of realization. These were men who had gone farther than I ever had, masters of scripture, models of purity. They had given their whole lives to what they believed was divine truth. And yet here they were, still waiting, still outside. I turned my gaze toward the gate. What lay beyond defied reason. It wasn't light as we know it. It was life itself. Every beam shimmered with purpose, each pulse filled with meaning. Inside that brilliance, I saw souls who had entered. Their faces were radiant beyond words, peaceful, complete, free of all shadow. They were home. They belonged. Then the truth struck me like lightning. None of the priests, none of the gurus, none of the wise men I once revered were entering. All were outside. I turned to Jesus. He stood beside me, calm and unshaken, his eyes fixed on the scene before us. But in his gaze there was sorrow, deep, endless sorrow, not for himself, but for them. My heart burned with questions I could barely form. I wanted to speak, but my voice felt locked inside my chest. Finally, I found the strength to whisper, "Why? Why can't they enter?" He turned to me slowly, his expression filled not with judgment, but with a kind of aching truth. His voice was steady, gentle, yet absolute. "Do you understand why they cannot enter?" The words hit me like a blade made of light. My chest tightened, my spirit trembled. I didn't want to know, and yet deep inside, I already did. I looked again at the men before the gate. Their faces, their tears, their faith that had carried them so far, all their knowledge, all their purity, all their striving, and still, the gate was closed. When I looked back at Jesus, my voice was barely sound. "Why, Lord? Why are they not entering?" He did not look away. He did not raise his voice. His eyes held no anger, only love so pure it hurt to meet. And then, quietly, with the weight of eternity in every word, he said, "Because they never knew me." The instant those words were spoken, the air itself shuddered. Light rippled through the expanse. The sea of souls seemed to stir. Something deep within me broke open, and before I could breathe, the entire space around us began to shift again. It was as if something unseen reached out and pulled back the curtain of existence itself, and in that instant I saw. Not with my eyes, not with reason, but with something deeper, alive, awake, ancient. It wasn't sight, it was knowing. The truth poured into me like a river breaking through a dam, unstoppable, radiant, undeniable. My whole life, I had believed salvation was a mountain to be climbed. I thought you had to earn it with sweat and sacrifice, purify yourself until not a shadow remained. I believed freedom was the reward for perfect devotion, for discipline that never faltered. Every breath I had ever taken was a step toward that idea. I built my world on karma, on ritual, on the dream that one day I would rise above this cycle and find release. But standing there, in that place where light had no source and knowledge needed no words, I saw everything differently. The truth was simple, yet it shattered everything I had built. It was never about earning, never about effort, never about perfection. It was about knowing him. When I turned, the gate was open again. More souls were stepping forward, one by one. But they weren't the people I had expected. Not the scholars, not the priests, not the masters of ritual and silence. They were the ones the world had cast aside. The broken, the forgotten, the ones who had lived through corruption and pain and chaos. Men and women who had stumbled through life, scarred and weary, carrying the weight of mistakes they could never undo. Yet as they crossed that radiant threshold, peace covered their faces like dawn. They knew where they were. They knew who waited for them. The sight struck me hard, like truth itself had a weight. My stomach tightened and something inside me fought what my soul already knew. These weren't the holy ones I had spent my life admiring. Where were the sages, the ascetics, the pure ones who had given up everything, who had spent decades fasting, meditating, seeking release from the world? Where were those like me? And then, from somewhere ahead, a sound broke through the stillness, a voice I knew. I looked up and my heart fell. It was a man I had worshipped as a child, a great scholar, a teacher of teachers. His words had once shaped my every belief. I had memorized his verses, quoted his lessons, followed his path. If any man deserved to enter, it was him. His wisdom had been a mountain, his devotion the gold standard by which we measured all others. But now his face was pale, drained of life. His hands trembled as he reached toward the light beyond the gate. His voice cracked, desperate. I denied myself. I honored the sacred texts. I lived righteously. I followed the path. I led thousands. Why am I still outside? The words echoed through the expanse. The silence that followed was deeper than any sound I had ever known. Then a voice, clear, fierce, alive, cut through everything. Jesus spoke. His words were light and thunder joined as one. I never knew you. The sound hit like a blade through my spirit. The scholar's body shook. His face twisted in anguish. He stumbled backward, disbelief in his eyes. No, he whispered, choking on the word. That cannot be. I prayed, I fasted, I lived for truth. His cries broke apart like waves against the silence, and then nothing. The gate did not move. I couldn't turn away. My breath came short, shallow. This man had been everything I admired, pure, disciplined, unwavering. If he stood outside, what hope was left for me? My thoughts blurred. My body felt weightless, yet heavy with realization. I turned to Jesus. His gaze met mine, and in that single look I saw everything. There was no anger in his eyes, only truth and sorrow woven together, steady and unyielding. And in that moment I understood. All my life I had trusted the wrong things. My rituals, my prayers, my purity, my own effort. I had believed salvation could be built by human hands, brick by brick. But I had never trusted him. I had never known him. My chest tightened. My heart ached as if it would break under the weight of truth. All the fasting, the chanting, the endless striving, it had not saved me. It had only fed my pride, built walls around my soul. I had lived for devotion itself, not for the one devotion was meant for. I looked at the gate again. The ones entering were not saints or masters. They weren't perfect. They were people who had surrendered, people who had laid down their pride and trusted in Jesus. That was the difference. That was everything. My hands trembled. My throat burned. How did I miss it? I tried to speak, but no sound came. My mind raced through memories. Long walks to temples, sleepless nights in prayer, cold floors beneath my knees, every ounce of pain I had called holy. I had spent a lifetime reaching upward, never realizing that the truth I sought had already reached for me. I had chased the idea of light while standing before the very source of it. A deep ache filled me. The question burned. If I had truly died in that moment, would I too have been left outside that gate? Before the thought could fully take shape, his voice came again, steady, unshaken, filled with mercy that cut through every layer of fear. You have seen the truth, Jesus said, but your time is not over. The air around me began to shift. My vision blurred, the light brightened until I could see nothing else. It wrapped around me like a storm made of peace. My thoughts fought to hold on, to cling to what I had known, but deep down I knew it was ending. Everything I had believed, everything I had built was falling away, because salvation was not found in effort, in karma, or in lifetimes of striving. It was found in him, and I had never known him. The light pulsed once more, the air trembled, and then everything began to shift again. The truth pressed against me so hard I could barely draw breath. It wasn't just something I learned, it was a force, a crushing weight that wrapped around me until even the air felt heavy, solid, like it had turned to stone. Every part of me wanted to run from it, to argue, to say it couldn't be real. But I couldn't. I had seen it. I had felt it. Truth itself was standing beside me, unshakable, alive, undeniable. And before I could gather a single thought, everything around me began to change again. The great gate that had glowed like fire, the radiant souls that moved with quiet purpose, the priests and monks fading into distance like smoke, all of it dissolved into pure light, swallowing sound and space. Then, suddenly, I was somewhere else entirely. I floated high above the earth. The world stretched beneath me like a living canvas. I could see it all, mountains crowned in snow, forests breathing mist, oceans pulsing with motion. I saw cities glowing with life, rivers like veins of light. It was beautiful, fragile, and full of movement. Humanity pulsed below me, billions of lives flowing together, each heart believing it was reaching toward truth. Then something pulled my gaze downward. I saw the temples first, tall spires rising from stone and dust, mosques shining like jewels beneath the sun, cathedrals filled with color and song, monasteries carved into the mountains where silence had its own voice, each one alive with devotion, some ancient and worn smooth by generations of prayer, others new and bright, built with steel and glass, still echoing with first hymns. Inside I saw people, so many people, kneeling, bowing, chanting, lighting candles, burning incense, reading scriptures with trembling hands. Their faces glowed with sincerity, eyes closed, hearts wide open. They wanted to be good, to be worthy, to touch God. I could feel it, how deeply they longed to be loved, to be seen. But under all that beauty, something was missing. Then I heard his voice beside me. Calm, steady, filled with a sorrow so deep it silenced everything else. Satan does not need to turn people against God, Jesus said. He only needs to convince them that religion is enough. The words struck me like lightning. I looked back down at the earth, at all those faces. They weren't wicked, they weren't rebellious, they were sincere. But now I could see it, the ache behind their devotion. They were chasing truth with all their strength, but never finding it. They were worshiping with full hearts, yet they didn't know him. My vision grew sharper. I saw everything in perfect clarity. Hindu priests in saffron robes ringing bells, their chants rising like smoke. Buddhist monks sitting still as stone, eyes closed, seeking to escape the hunger of the world. Muslim imams bowing in rhythm, voices echoing through vast mosques. Catholic priests lifting the Eucharist with trembling hands. Orthodox bishops swinging incense, evangelical pastors crying out in passion from bright pulpits. Everywhere. Faith. Everywhere. Longing. And still, an emptiness so deep it almost hurt to witness. They knew religion. They didn't know him. Jesus' voice came again, quiet and steady. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Those words, ones I had studied, maybe even repeated, cut through me like a blade. I had heard them, but I had never understood. I thought sacrifice was the highest form of devotion. I thought pain proved purity, that the more I denied myself, the closer I came to God. But now I saw the truth. All my fasting, all my rituals, all my striving had been motion without surrender, sound without heart. Images flashed before me, my own life replaying in unbearable clarity, the long fast that left my body weak, the endless mantras spoken till my throat went dry, the nights on cold temple floors where I begged for peace that never came. I had believed that heaven was something to be earned by suffering. I had been proud of my discipline, proud of my strength. But what I had never known was grace. That was the deception, the ancient and perfect one. Satan didn't need to turn people away from God. He only needed to keep them busy, busy with ritual, busy with striving, busy building ladders that never reached high enough. He had turned devotion into corruption, truth replaced by chaos disguised as holiness. I looked down again, and this time the sight broke something inside me. There were people crying out in prayer, their voices echoing through marble halls, but I could feel their fear. They didn't know if anyone was listening. I saw men and women who had given up everything for faith, yet their hearts trembled with doubt. They were afraid they hadn't done enough, afraid their sacrifices still fell short. And then I saw him, an old monk alone in a stone cell, his robe worn thin, his skin pale, hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white, his lips moved in silent prayer. I felt his heart. It was shaking. His entire life had been an offering. He had renounced everything, comfort, family, joy. He had starved himself for purity, waited for peace that never came. And now, as he neared the end, he was still afraid that even after all this, he wasn't enough. That fear tore through me because it wasn't just his, it was mine. I knew that expression. I had seen it in the mirror of my own devotion, the endless question that had haunted me for years. Have I done enough? And I knew the answer before I could speak it. No, none of us ever could. Tears blurred my sight. That monk was me. His trembling heart, his doubt, his striving, it was all my life, laid bare. I turned toward Jesus, unable to stand under the weight of it. My soul felt naked, undone. His eyes met mine, steady and full of mercy that burned brighter than the sun. You have seen the truth, he said softly. Now you understand why they cannot enter. I tried to speak, but my words broke apart. Because I did understand. If I had died in that temple, if my body had never woken again, I would have been one of them, standing outside, lost, not because I was evil, not because I rejected God, but because I had never known Jesus. I had trusted in religion. I had trusted in myself. The realization tore through me, burning away every illusion I had built. The years of ritual, the fasting, the devotion, all of it turned to dust in the light of that single truth. And as Jesus' words faded into the silence, the air around me began to tremble again. The light deepened. The ground beneath me seemed to melt into motion. The world itself began to shift. The scene before me dissolved into motion again. The edges of what I once thought was real bending and trembling like heat rising from a desert road. The sound of their cries, raw, desperate, endless, echoed through the emptiness until it faded into silence. Yet even in that silence, I could still hear them somewhere deep inside me. The abyss hadn't vanished. It clung to the corners of my soul like ash that wouldn't wash away. The ground was gone. The air was gone. I was suspended in a vast stillness where nothing moved, nothing breathed. My body no longer felt like my own. I tried to speak, to ask, to beg, but no sound came. My voice was gone, stolen by the weight of what I had just seen. I could feel it, a truth too large for words pressing against the walls of my being. I understood now what I had never dared to know. All my devotion, all my rituals, every drop of effort and study, real, yes, but never enough. I had spent my life building an altar to something that could not save me. Every prayer, every fast, every sermon I gave, it had all been pointed in the wrong direction. And then, in the stillness, he was there. Jesus. He didn't appear like a vision or a shape. He was. The light around him wasn't light the way I had known it. It was living truth, cutting through me, exposing every hidden part. I couldn't hide anything. His gaze saw through everything. The pride I called discipline, the certainty I named faith, the devotion that had never truly surrendered. For a moment, time itself held its breath. The air began to tremble, and I could feel something shifting, not outside, but in the fabric of existence itself. The darkness below began to move, folding in on itself like a curtain being drawn back. And then, once again, everything around me began to shift. The world froze. The light stopped moving. Time became a single held note. Then his words entered me, not through my ears, but through my very being. You must warn them. Those words filled me, vibrating through my soul until they became all I could hear. I wanted to speak, but no sound came. What could I possibly say? Who would believe me? How could I tell them that everything they trusted, their devotion, their traditions, their sacrifices, was never enough? Jesus looked at me, and his eyes held no anger, only sorrow. Tell them what you saw, he said. Tell them I am real. Tell them that religion cannot save, that faith in me alone gives life. His voice carried both love and gravity, a mix of compassion and command. I felt his words settle deep within me, heavy but alive. I didn't want to return. I didn't want to face the ones who still walked the same path I had followed for years. I had built temples, spoken to crowds, written teachings that now felt like shadows of truth. How could I go back and tell them that everything we built, every chant, every fast, every act of devotion, meant nothing without him? The light around Jesus began to grow brighter, spreading until I could hardly see. I shielded my face, but his presence was everywhere, strong, pure, eternal. You have seen the truth, he said quietly. Now you must speak it. Many will reject you, many will mock you, but some will hear, and for them it will mean life. My chest ached. I wanted to say yes, but fear held me in place. Then I remembered the cries, the faces of those I'd seen at the edge of the abyss, their eyes wide, their voices breaking as they fell into darkness. And I knew. I couldn't stay silent. I nodded slowly. Tears streamed down my face, hot and endless. I'll go, I whispered. The light pulsed and began to shift again, wrapping around me in waves of warmth and sound. It wasn't just light anymore. It was alive, filled with presence. It knew me. It moved through every part of who I was, washing away everything false and broken. The air itself hummed, vibrating with power. The closer Jesus came, the less I existed as anything separate. Thought, breath, heartbeat, all of it dissolved into the brilliance of his being. The light grew unbearable. My body felt weightless, my spirit stretched open like a flame drawn to the wind. And then, through that flood of living brightness, his voice broke through again. Clear, steady, filled with both love and authority. Go and tell them I never wanted religion. I wanted relationship. The words struck through me like lightning. They didn't echo, they lived. They moved through every memory, every moment, every lie I had ever believed. I saw the years of devotion, the endless search for purity, the teachings I had carried to others, and how far they had all missed the mark. I had believed salvation could be earned, that we could climb our way toward the divine through enough sacrifice, enough prayer, enough stillness. But now, in that piercing vision, I saw the truth. I had been blind. I hadn't been guiding people toward light. I had been leading them into corruption disguised as holiness. Jesus spoke again. his voice calm but filled with grief. Satan's greatest victory is making people think they are saved when they are not. Those words hit me like a blade. I felt them in my spirit, sharp, cold, unstoppable. That was it, the great deception. The enemy didn't need to turn people against God. He only needed to make them believe they could reach heaven without Jesus. That single lie had wrapped the world in chains. It had swallowed entire generations. It had swallowed me. Images flooded my mind. The priests at their altars, the monks in silent halls, the scholars hunched over holy books, faces of people I'd known, people I'd taught, their devotion sincere, their hearts pure, but their eyes closed to him. They were walking toward light, but the light they followed ended in darkness. I thought of the temples I had helped build, the mosques I'd visited, the monasteries, the churches, the candles, the chants, the endless prayers. All of it looked holy, but without Jesus it was hollow. Empty motion, beautiful noise with no life behind it. And now I could see. The truth burned inside me, heavy and alive. It wasn't just something to know, it was something I had to carry. I turned toward Jesus, trembling, and asked, "How do I make them see?" His gaze held me still. "Tell them the truth," he said simply. I wanted to protest. I wanted to tell him they would laugh, reject me, call me lost. But when I met his eyes, all my fear dissolved. It didn't matter who believed me. It only mattered that they heard. They needed to know, every one of them. A deep stillness fell. My next breath felt like my first. I was ready, broken, terrified, but ready. I would warn them. I would speak. I would share the truth I had seen. I opened my mouth to tell him I understood, that I would go wherever he sent me. But before the words could form, the light began to pull away. The warmth faded. The sound thinned into silence. Everything around me folded into nothing. And then, suddenly, completely, everything went black. I came back with a violent gasp, air tearing through my lungs like fire. My body jolted upright before I could even think. My chest heaved, my heart slamming against my ribs as if trying to break free. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. I only felt the raw panic of someone who had been pulled out of drowning. My skin was slick with sweat. My fingers trembled. My pulse beat like thunder in my ears. Then, white walls, cold air, the sharp, steady rhythm of machines, the hospital. I blinked against the fluorescent lights, each one too bright, too clean. Tubes ran from my arm, wires clung to my chest. The sheets were rough. The air smelled of antiseptic, like metal and plastic mixed. Everything looked so painfully ordinary, and yet it felt charged with life. Every sound, every texture, every heartbeat, it all pulsed with meaning. I could feel my own existence pressing down on me like never before. The oxygen mask hissed against my face, pushing cool air into my lungs, and in that moment I knew with absolute certainty something irreversible had happened. The vision was still alive inside me. Not a memory, not a dream. It burned there, clear as light. I could still hear Jesus' voice, calm and powerful, echoing through my chest like a bell that would never stop ringing. I knew what I had seen was real, more real than the walls around me, more real than breath itself. My hands clutched at the bedsheet. I tried to steady myself, but the flood of images came back with force. The gates, the lost souls, the cries that tore through the air. People who had spent their lives chasing salvation through ritual and devotion, only to find the door closed. I saw the faces of priests, monks, scholars, all those who had tried so hard, given everything, but still never truly knew him. The door swung open. A nurse rushed in, startled by the sound of my gasping. Her eyes widened when she saw me awake. She pressed 2 fingers to my wrist, her voice breaking between urgency and relief. "You're awake," we thought. She stopped mid-sentence, searching my face. "Are you okay? You've been unconscious for days." Days. The word hit like thunder. I had been gone for days. I tried to speak, but my throat felt torn and dry. My first words came out as a whisper. I saw, but I couldn't finish. How could I tell her? How could I explain what it meant to stand at the edge of eternity and hear truth spoken by the one I had never truly known? Tears blurred my vision. Everything I had believed, every ritual, every chant, every sacrifice, crumbled under the weight of what I now understood. The greatest deception wasn't hate or disbelief. It was corruption disguised as devotion, the lie that religion could replace relationship, that ritual could replace faith, that devotion could stand in for Jesus. The cries of those beyond the gate echoed again, haunting and sharp. We followed every rule. We gave everything. I could still hear them. I had lived just like they had. I had believed the same things. I had stood on the same path, thinking purity would save me. And I had come one heartbeat away from joining them, forever. A cold shiver ran through me. My heart clenched, heavy with the truth. If I had died fully that day, I would have been there among them, pleading, confused, desperate, hearing those words no soul ever wants to hear. I never knew you. My chest tightened until it hurt, my eyes stung with tears that wouldn't fall. Above me, the ceiling blurred into white light. I was still here, alive, for a reason. I had been sent back, not as a reward, but as a warning. Jesus had given me one last mission. I lay there trembling, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I could possibly tell the world. Would anyone believe me? The priests I had trained with, the monks I had studied beside, the followers who once hung on my every word, what would they say if I told them that everything we built, everything we sacrificed was a trap, that the rituals we thought brought light had kept us in darkness? Would they mock me? Reject me? Maybe. Probably. But silence would make me part of the same chaos that had deceived us. Because the truth was now carved into my heart. Jesus is the only way. Not religion, not laws, not karma, not sacred texts, not enlightenment. Only Him. I drew in a slow, shaking breath. My pulse steadied, but my purpose burned stronger with each second. I couldn't stay quiet. I had to speak. I had to warn them before it was too late. If I didn't, their blood would be on my hands. I turned my head slightly, eyes still on the blinding light above. My voice cracked through the silence, raw but clear. Thank you, Lord, for letting me come back. Because the war hadn't ended when I woke up. It had only begun. I could feel it, an unseen battle moving beneath the surface of this world. And Satan's greatest weapon was still the same, to make people believe they were safe when they were not.